website, which is over 200 pages.
Today, I'd like to congratulate Karen Cosell for the publishing. I didn't pronounce that correctly. I'm
It's
sorry.
okay. It's okay.
For the publishing of her article titled Lessons Learned as a Caregiver in Authority magazine. She is a writer, podcast host, coach, and founder of Out of Your Ordinary. She is a neurospicy homeschooling mom and caregiver to two, she calls them semi-feral, but always lovable ADHD kiddos. Her mission is to help neurodivergent and autism parents understand that self-care and resilience are the keys to successfully parenting their unique kiddos without losing themselves or their minds in the process. First, neurospicy is a term I've never heard before. Would you define it for me, please?
Sure. The term neurodivergence is such a huge umbrella, and it's just another way of saying it. The language around neurodiversity gets really tricky, and people have really strong opinions on it. And I like the term neurospicy because our lives definitely aren't bland. Um, Me, the kids, my husband, we all have our own unique flavor and spiciness level. So it just seemed the best term to use.
Is it a term that you invented?
Oh, no, no, no. I have no clue where it came from, so big credit to whoever came up with it. Uh, it also, I have a background in marketing and as a copywriter. It gets repetitive saying neurodivergent, autism, autistic all the time. So it's another word to use to, no pun intended, but spice things up.
Okay. Tell us where your journey of caregiving began.
Oh, goodness. When I was pregnant with my oldest, I've got two kids. They are both autistic, have significant sensory issues, a couple of other things going on. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a genetic collagen disorder, and I am the genetic carrier for all of the challenges that they face. So I went through my pregnancy not knowing any of those things. It was a very complicated pregnancy, and as soon as my oldest was born, he was a very, very high needs baby, and it just kind of continued from there. So conception, people ask, when did his autism start? When you fill out the paperwork, you have to write down what was the start date of this condition, and it
Yes.
conception, right? So that's been our experience.
Wow. Not what you probably had in mind when you planned to have a baby.
It really wasn't, but we made it through, and then I had the silly mindset of maybe it won't be so bad the second time. So we we had our younger child, and then there will only ever be two. We're
Yes.
definitely done.
Well, gosh, I'm curious, and if you don't want to answer this question, you don't have to. But I'm wondering, given your genetic makeup, have you had to work at like forgiving yourself for
Yes.
whatever
Um,
role your DNA played in all of this?
oh yes. And that's been a huge part of my growth as a parent and as a human and as a almost 50-year-old lady.
Yeah.
Um, it was letting go of the fact that I did the best I could with the information I had at the time. Looking back at my family history and the people that I love the most in my family, my grandfather, who is my favorite person of all time, it really, besides my husband and my kids, I should say, um,
Okay.
I could see in him traits where that's the side of the family where the Ehlers-Danlos came from, which is closely linked with autism. And I could see some Ehlers-Danlos traits in him and some autistic-like traits as well. And just recognizing that even though I do have some guilt for passing these challenges on to my children, because at the end of the day, they are challenges, they are disabling. Yes, it helps in some ways and it makes the tapestry of humanity more complete, right? But
Mhm.
for the people that experience it, it's hard.
Yeah.
And to just know that I kind of set them up to struggle from the beginning is a hard thing to swallow. But connecting it back with that person that I cared about the most and knowing that it came from him and seeing what a good life he led without the awareness or the knowledge that we have, or the tools or the support or some of the therapies and the medications and the things that we have today for me and the kids. It gives me hope that things will be okay for everyone in the future.
I have not had your experience, but I've had other things between myself and my one, both children, in fact, that over the years I found that self forgiveness, releasing myself for responsibilities that I didn't know how to handle at the time, allows me to move forward with my life. But keeping myself in a state of self judgment kind of nails my feet to the floor. It keeps me from moving forward.
100%. That has been my experience as well.
I'm so glad to hear that, and I'm very proud of you because self forgiveness is hard work.
It is. And for me, the challenge was to navigate that while we were in, a crisis
Yeah.
level of challenge, right? I don't talk really specifically about my kids as individuals, just because they deserve to have some privacy. And one of the big things I built my platform on was, let's not share meltdown videos. Let's not share our kids' dirtiest, deepest, darkest secrets on the internet for clout, right? So I don't do that. But we can all universally agree COVID and lockdown was challenging.
Yes.
So as we're going through that, and our family in particular had 6 months of extremely stressful and traumatic events even before COVID lockdown happened. So we were already like in it. And going through that period, isolated, alone, I ended up having to go no contact with my own mother. Um, and navigating all of this and realizing like I'm going to air quote this part of the problem, right? So these things that I'm finding so challenging in the kids, realizing that I'm sort of the one that they, you know, got it from, and
Mhm.
then wow, and it's been a journey, um, and I haven't always handled it well, but it feels in a lot of ways we are through the other side of that. My oldest is going to be 15, and we've developed a wonderful relationship that is built on memes and joking and having just a connection that doesn't always feel super mom kid, but more peer to peer, not in the way we let him just get away with whatever he wants to do, right? We're not permissive in that way, but he has rules and guidelines, and we're helping him turn into an adult. But we're connecting on a level we couldn't when he was younger because he just wasn't willing to
Yeah.
um, participate in that type of relationship.
That must give you a great deal of joy.
It does. It does. So many people, friends of mine, are fearful of parenting teens and what that's going to be like. And it certainly has some challenges and some unique moments and conversations we've had to have.
Mhm.
But overall, it's amazing watching him turn into an adult. And my youngest is going to be 11, and she is not quite there yet, but starting to see a little bit of who she's going to be as an adult. And that's really fun too.
Well, in the article, you mentioned that there is a very important lesson you wish someone had told you in the beginning. Can you repeat that here, or do you want me to give you a clue?
Could you give me a clue, please? It's been a very, very long week here.
I I remember the word marathon.
Oh, it is a marathon, not a sprint. Um, I see, and this especially is for children with developmental disabilities who are, it probably pertains to other diagnoses and disabilities as well. One of the big things with getting a child diagnosed with autism is that the first line of therapy they're going to recommend is something called ABA, which is applied behavioral analysis therapy. I won't go into the specifics of that topic. It's horribly controversial. My
Okay.
personal feelings on it are not super relevant at this moment, but they tell you to put your child in 30 to 40 hours of therapy a week. You know, your 2-year-old, your 3-year-old, and they will, and I'm talking, the doctor that diagnoses you, the agency that runs these programs. At one point, we were doing almost 30 appointments a week between me and the two kids.
Oh my gosh, I can't even
It's
imagine.
it's not sustainable, right? And
Oh,
we really fell into the trap of I never had time to enjoy being their mom. And with love and respect to those children and the people they are today and to myself, I didn't have a lot of opportunities to enjoy it, right? It was challenging. I felt like a case manager, a care coordinator, an honorary nurse, in addition to all the other things that parents do, right? We're cooking and we're cleaning and we're teaching them how to be people and, we're trying to set up play dates and we homeschool on top of that for reasons. It
yeah.
it just was so much and y- rarely do you ever hear people say do less when it comes to kids with disabilities and with medical needs? And I'm not advocating for not getting them the care that they need, but understand, especially if you're in a family where maybe one kid has high needs, maybe one kid has low needs. Maybe you have neurotypical and a neurodivergent child. Maybe one has a physical health condition and the other one is healthy and not having those challenges. You got to balance it for everybody, right? You can't always, and there will be times where you have to, right?
Right,
And that's the sprint part, but it's a
right.
marathon and you have to pace yourself. You have to choose what's going to work the best for the most number of people in your family at any given time.
You were so complimentary about the role your husband has played. Tell us a little bit about him.
Oh boy. Um, he- he's an awesome guy. He used to be a nanotech engineer and he sort of walked away from that a couple years ago to help us out here a little bit more at home and to take over some of the homeschooling. And he is doing a great job of connecting with our oldest now. They do a lot of outdoor things together, mountain biking, hunting, fishing. He keeps me calm. I have a tendency to my own particular neurospiciness. I get myself real worked up.
Mhm.
And I get very active in doing too many things, and I don't ever recognize when maybe I have accepted too many things on my plate. So he's really good at helping me pull myself back from that. And he's the calmer parent
Mhm.
when it comes to pretty much everything. And I am the one who makes the schedules and does our best to keep us on track.
Well, it sounds like you were very fortunate to have such a man as him.
For
Um,
sure. The divorce rates for parents that have an autistic kid, it's, I think, 60 to 75%. It's really, really high. And, we've been married almost 20 years. So,
how
so
do
far,
you
so good.
how do you keep your marriage healthy in the midst of so many demands?
That's a good question. I'm super low maintenance is, and I'm super low maintenance. So is he. We don't have a huge need for the other one to meet our needs,
Mhm.
right? So he'll do his thing, I'll do my thing. We'll come together when we need to or we want to, right? And like I said, he kind of helps talk me off the ledge, and I
Uh,
kind of help give him a little gentle push when he needs it. And we be honest, we don't go on dates often. We never had caregivers for the kids when we were young, when everyone was younger, right? They weren't the kids you could leave with the teenage babysitter. We don't have any family local, so grandparents weren't an option. And, we kind of do what we can when we can and make the best of it when we can.
I've interviewed other parents of caregivers, sometimes children, sometimes older family members. But it's a challenge to carve out time to nurture themselves, let alone a marriage relationship. So, what have you found that has kind of refilled your cup when you are drained dry, and you must get drained dry sometimes?
Oh, sometimes. Um, it for me, it's the small daily things that add up. In our in our culture, self-care has been co-opted to be this expensive luxury experience, right? And the term was actually coined by a feminist activist in the 1970s named Audre Lorde, who was an amazing human. And I think she coined the term as she was going through cancer treatment.
Yeah,
And self-care isn't about going and getting a mani-pedi. Like, I haven't had my hair done in almost a year. Um, these
yeah,
nails ain't painted, right? I Self-care for me is doing the things that are going to help me get through the day and help me want to get out of bed in the morning.
yeah.
So that looks like doing my gratitude journal every night,
Mhm,
doing meditations. I'm a big reader, so reading is one of my favorite ways to kind of check out for a little while. Um, Reading when I can, doing my best to stay off social media. And we all love to scroll, right? Like, ooh, it's like a slot machine in your hand. Recognize what it is, be mindful of your use, because I know lately it has not been making me feel very good when I do get a chance to get on it.
mhm.
Um, and I also write. Writing is like therapy for me. And I go to therapy. So I found a wonderful therapist that I've connected with. We meet on telehealth so that I don't have to worry about childcare. It makes it easier for me to stay consistent with meeting with her.
Mhm.
Um, and in the past, I've worked with different coaches to help me both as a parent, as a business owner, as a writer, and I just find value in making plans and working towards goals. That's a huge part of my self-care.
It sounds like a good basket of things
Yes.
that you draw on as you need them.
Yep.
You mentioned that admitting that your life with your children is hard was helpful to you. It was hard for you to admit, but then was helpful along with finding a community. Where did you find a community?
That is a wonderful question. There were some spaces where I found it, and then there were some spaces where I created it. And I recently had to leave one of those spaces that I found and then kind of became an admin of over some issues that I won't go into here. Um, the problem with any type of space, specifically for neurodivergent people, is there will be neurodivergent people there, right? And with that strong sense of justice, sometimes one person's opinion and another person's opinion don't meet in the middle,
Mm,
and some lines have to be drawn. And it was a wonderful place for me while I was there. It was the soft space I needed to land for some time. And Facebook, right? There are so many groups on Facebook. I have my own group, which is called the Self-Care Support Squad. And this other group was a specific to my area. And it every state is going to have a autism parents group. It may not be called that, right? But if you just Google or go to Facebook and type in the name of your state and autism parenting, you're going to find something. Um, Tons of resources now for different larger groups that deal with different subsets and different specific diagnoses within the neurodivergent umbrella. And it's really just about deciding one that you want that community and support. Very few people that I meet today have those really strong family connections or really strong community connections, especially if they're not in a church or if they're not religious and actively attending services. Even
mhm.
those people that often because of the behaviors their children exhibit after some time or some events, they're not necessarily welcome in those places anymore. So a lot of people are struggling to find community. I would suggest looking to Facebook groups. The nice thing about those is that you can ask questions about the state requirements for getting things like the Katie Beckett waiver, getting Medicaid. You can check in about different doctors that have been good or doctors that haven't been good. Um, my experience has been that those groups don't often meet in person as much because everyone's kind of scrambling and struggling a bit. I have had better luck doing in-person meetups and expanding my social circle in the homeschooling group that I started,
I
which
see.
we began when my oldest was 5, so we're going on 10 years now.
Uh,
Um, just because it was really hard to connect with other homeschoolers who were doing things in a similar way that we were.
yes.
And yeah, so those that group has meetups because again, not everyone, how do I put it? Don't be afraid to look outside neurodiverse or disabled only environments to try to get your children and yourself some community support. There are wonderful places to go. We did a adaptive dance class for my daughter, and I made some wonderful friends there. So did she. And that was wonderful while it was working for our schedule and her needs. She also is going to be doing some different enrichment activities. Community is where you find it, it's where you build it. It's hard, I think, when you're neurodivergent, because we're kind of like magnets, right? We find each other. And that's been one of the funnest things about recognizing my own neurodivergence is realizing, hey, wow, all of your friends are too, for the most part.
Uh-huh.
And we're all stretched thin, and our kids are all giving us a run for our money.
Yeah.
And we're all going through it right now. And it makes it hard to show up in person the way that, you know, remember my parents, friends coming over all the time. And I'm sure you probably had that experience when you were younger as well. And that's just not how life is today, unfortunately. Um, but then I think my kids would not do well if I constantly had friends over all the time, and that would be really dysregulating for them.
Well, I think we all tend to find community among people that are maybe having similar
Yeah,
circumstances or at a similar level of personal growth
yep.
or and sometimes a community can fit you really well for a while and then it doesn't anymore and it's time to move on. So I'm going to just rattle off the 5 suggestions you made in the article. One was focus on sleep. Self-care is not a luxury, it's a lifeline. What works for others may not work for you. You are a person too. Don't lose yourself in the caregiving. I so appreciated hearing that one. And distribute the emotional labor equitably.
Yes.
Because I'm primarily a marriage coach, I'm interested, as I'm sure other caregivers may also be interested, and I asked you this a few minutes ago, so you may not even have anything else to offer, but how you and your husband manage to keep your marriage strong in the midst of the constant needs of your children.
Um, I do a lot of the emotional work.
Mm-hmm,
I'll just put it out there. And that does get really frustrating sometimes.
mm-hmm,
And I recognize the fact that my need to make sure things are okay overrides my frustration at him not doing more.
mm-hmm,
And I check in with myself. One of the things about, especially being an autistic woman who grew up not being diagnosed and,
mm-hmm.
studied psychology and has always been around the people and, turned learning how to be a good human sort of into my special interest, I'm painfully self-aware. So I'm always asking myself, is this what I need to do for me, for him, for the kids? Is this the best course of action? What will be the outcome? What will be the challenge if we don't do it this way, and doing a million calculations in my head before I make a decision about anything.
Mhm.
So I can't get mad at him for the fact that that's the way my brain works, right?
That's so wise of you.
And thank you. And it took me some time to get here, right? Like this is not a long-standing revelation.
Yeah.
So understanding that he can't see in here, and we joke about it, like, dude, you don't want any of this. Like you don't, we joke about, I wish I could take a vacation in his brain. I
Yes.
really, really do. Um, what I found helps us, we do a Sunday tidy where he has four chores. I have a lot more than four chores, but I write four chores down for myself, and the kids each have four chores.
Uh-huh.
And that way it makes me feel like he's helping, they're helping, I have some support. And when
Yes.
I get, and this is going to sound awful and it isn't healthy, and I don't recommend anyone else do this, but this is what works for me. When I just feel like I have that little bit of, I'm getting some help, I'm getting some support, I'm getting some buy-in and some contribution around here, it fills me all week,
Mhm.
right? Because I notice everything. I notice when the dishes didn't get done, or when the floor is dirty, or when our car sick rescue dog has gotten bit all over the carpet after my husband took him disc golfing, right? Like these are the things I notice.
Mhm.
And while I do think the onus is on everyone to notice what's going on inside their home and to participate in the maintenance and upkeep of it, I cut him some slack
Mhm.
in the areas where I can, and in the areas where I can't. Have you heard of Eve Rodsky and the Fair Play team concept?
A little bit of a bell, but I can't say that I could tell you anything about it.
Her whole thing is the concept, and I don't have them on my shelves. Okay, I try to keep all of my, I want to show you this awesome thing kind of handy, but it's not here. Fair Play is the name of her system. And her whole idea is every week you sit down and you have literally a deck of cards and you shuffle and you say, okay, I've got a heavy week. I need you to take these things and I'm going to do these things. And then we agree on who's going to do
Mhm.
what done means, like what a completed task looks like. And now these are your cards and you go do them. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to worry about them because they will, the person who has the card for the week will conceive of what needs to happen. They will plan to make it happen and then they will execute without the other person's input.
Mhm.
When we have seasons where things are getting very hectic, that's what we try to implement. There are certain things, unfortunately, that I can't hand off to him, right? Doctor's appointments. He doesn't know the medical history because it's so extensive. It's
Right.
not just like a normal parent going to a normal doctor's appointment, right? So I kind of have to go to those, and the kids prefer me. So I'm not going to be like, here, dude, you take them to the doctor. Ha ha. But he can take them to therapy, long-standing therapy appointments.
Uh-huh.
He does the grocery shopping. He is really great about keeping gas in the vehicles and doing all the vehicle maintenance, so I never have to worry about that. He is the floor cleaner because I despise doing it. He cleans out the chicken coop, right? So we've got a division of labor that works for us
Mhm.
most of the time. And when things are really hectic. Like this week, I'm moving my website to a new web host and it's over 200 pages.
Oh boy.
So I'm in the thick of it, right?
Yeah.
So he's helping out with making dinner. He's being a little more present for the kids if they need support. Um, he's stepping in and doing some things he wouldn't normally do so that I have the time and the space to get the rest of the stuff done.
I learned many years ago, and this seems to be most typical of women, is when we walk into our homes, things talk to us. You know, the dishes are talking, they need to be done. There's dust on the table, there's scattered things on the floor that need to be picked up. We've got 10 voices
Mhm.
shouting us when we walk in the door. And it's my understanding is that it's partly the way our brains work. We have an easier flow between the right and left parts of our brain, so we're able to multitask. Men don't have as much fluidity between right and left brain. My husband was always very happy to help me, but give me a list,
Yeah,
which sounds like the cards that you're using. He didn't,
really similar.
yeah, he didn't want to have to remember things. Just give me a list and also let him choose the time when they would be done. So I'd say sometime between now and Wednesday, can you vacuum? And he was happy to do that, and he could fit it into his schedule.
It's all about finding what works for you. And I know there's a lot of talk now about the emotional labor of even having to be the one to make the list. Like it
Yeah,
really, but the way I look at it, it's my brain that's getting squirrely,
yeah,
right? And it's my neurospiciness calling my attention to everything. And I'm the one who can't function
uh-huh,
or work on getting my blog, doing my work
mhm.
when those other things are going on. And he literally doesn't see it. The kids don't see it.
No,
And we talk and we try. I've given up on with love and intention. I have given up on him because it's not the hill I want to die on.
mhm.
And I give him a list and do the list, and
That's
then we're good, right? But the kids, like, hey, child, take a look around the house. What do you think needs to happen? I don't know. Well, let's look with our looking eyes and try to figure it out.
yeah,
And that's because my husband could be a fully functioning adult on his own. He's not the kind of guy who doesn't know how to do laundry or, vacuum. He knows how to do all that stuff. If
mhm.
heaven forbid something happened to me tomorrow, they'd get through, right? The kids need to learn the life skills. My husband has the skills. He just doesn't have the sensory perceptions that I do. So on we go. It's not something I'm going to argue about.
No,
Just do the list, dude, and we're good.
I love that you said it. Some things are not the hill you want to die on. It's just flow with it.
No. And
My my son told me once that he would not want to spend even 1 hour inside his wife's brain
it's terrifying.
because she's a worrier. She's always thinking about all the options, and he's far more easygoing. Your
That's,
children's condition has led to your life purpose. Would you
yes.
please tell us about that journey?
Oh, sure. It, one thing became really clear to me during COVID, and that was that I needed to start taking better care of myself. Because we had, like I said, up to 30 appointments a week for three of us. And I was a hot buttered mess. You know, it had been an exhausting 10 years. And again, no family support. My husband at the time was working 60 hours a week
Ooh,
and was on call 24/7, right? He was also an essential worker through the pandemic because he was working on a government contract. So
okay.
we really went through it. And I was so miserable um, and realized that I you can't pour from an empty cup. And I was so empty and shattered and broken and all over the floor. So I think it was a Facebook ad that I saw about become a yoga instructor. I was like, oh, I like yoga. So I started doing a yoga class online, which led to me becoming a meditation instructor. And as I started getting deeper into those things, and I have a background as a massage therapist, so I've always been kind of in the natural healing,
Mm-hmm.
woo-woo, if you want to call it woo-woo space.
I just
Um,
call it necessity.
oh, it is. Oh my gosh. It really is. So I just realized I had come so far from where I was, and I was not happy with my life or with my relationships with my kids or my relationship with my husband or everything was a mess. And I
Yeah.
just started thinking about what's going to help. And I couldn't leave the house. I didn't
Yeah.
have childcare, couldn't leave him alone. Um, finances were not a concern, but also I didn't have a lot of money to be throwing around and spending. I started reading more. I read, I think it was Janice Kaplan's The Gratitude Diaries,
Yeah.
and it just transformed the way I looked at my life. So instead of getting angry that my kid spilled cereal again, I was happy that my kid tried to feed themselves.
Okay.
Right. And just flipping that script. So for every time I got angry or I got frustrated, which was a lot, I would
Uh-huh.
try to find the good. And eventually my brain just started noticing the good. And then once I started noticing the good, more good happened. Right.
Yes. Yes.
And once I sort of got out of the hole I was in, I wanted to work with the coach. I had a marketing agency that I was running. I wrote emails for female coaches and course creators. So I was in this space of all of these people helping others in that way. So my natural inclination was someone's got to have a $97 course out there about this. And
Yes.
shockingly, they didn't.
Yeah.
Um, there's one other person, and she's in Canada, so not even US based, talking about self-care for neurodivergent and autism parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that can't be right. And so then my how hard could it be gene kicks in. I'm like, I can do it. And, 2 years later, here I am. And it has been such an amazing journey. I learned so much about myself going through that yoga training and the meditation training, and then all the coaching training that I did. And it really filled my cup up. I am someone who loves to learn. I am a huge helper. I want to make things better for other people. The way my brain works, I am really good at organizing things and making complicated things simple and breaking things down so that they get even simpler. And with my coaching business, it has just enabled me to support other parents in ways that are meaningful, build that community that I want to see and that I think the world needs to have exist.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it's enabled me to share my challenges in a way that doesn't violate my kids' privacy and it doesn't harm our relationship. I
Right.
worked so hard to establish the loving and trusting relationship I have with them
Yeah.
and to build a business about, being an autism parent or being neurodivergent. So many people talk about their kids and not always, the meltdown videos and how hard it is. Some people have accounts where they share their children's experiences and their activities, and I didn't want that for my family, and it was really hard to find a way to do it. And I have, and I'm really happy with how I've been able to sort of throw all my interests into one space and create the community that I have.
I have so much respect for the fact that when you were down and out, so to speak, you began to look for how can I help myself? What can I change that will change me?
Yep.
And it eventually changed your outlook, your environment. I think gratitude is one of the most magical practices that we can adopt.
Yeah.
And then I also am so impressed with how you set up boundaries around your children to not only protect them, but protect your relationship with them. And how smart, that's so smart, for the long run, the long term.
Yeah.
Like when they're 4 or 5, you can expose things about them without necessarily hurting your relationship. But by the time they're 15 and 11, they would feel that lack of protection.
Oh, it happens before then, and maybe it's just my unique children. But I have my oldest was born in late spring, so by the time Halloween came around when he was a baby, he was a perfect size to just put in a pumpkin, right? So I have pictures on Facebook of him in a pumpkin, like a carved out pumpkin, and it's cuter than you ever want to see. And he came across them somehow. I was showing him pictures of something else, and he's like, "What is that?" And I was like, "That's you in a pumpkin." And he asked me to take it down. He's like, I don't want that there. So even, navigating digital media is a whole other
Oh,
conversation to have, but
yeah,
even putting those baby pictures up that you would normally feel totally within your rights to share as a parent,
right.
even that, and especially, raising neurodivergent kids, the way their brains work and their sense of right and wrong and what's okay and what's not.
Well,
Yeah, it's a tricky landscape.
in our culture, they have so many people or experiences that are against them
Yeah.
that to have a mom and a dad that are protective and totally in their camp has to mean even more.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, is someone who did not grow up with that experience and is determined to be that parent for my children, I think is one of the best things that I can give them. And getting the self-care that I need made it possible for me to want to be like that, right? Because before I started taking better care of myself, I was not happy. I
Hmm.
met their needs and I was doing my best and I was hanging on by a thread, but
Hmm.
their feelings were never my top concern. We were in survival mode and there just wasn't room for it. So,
Survival mode is a place you don't want to be for very long. And I, as I said, I haven't had your experience, but I had two babies when my husband died.
oh goodness.
I had an 8 month old and a 2 year old, and
Oh,
I was in survival mode for about 5 years until finally life began to look like it could be good again. But that survival mode is a miserable place to be.
and it is. And it, struggling with knowing exactly what I want to say right now. Um, it is something unique when it is a particular event
Mm-hmm.
to get through.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it, for us, was just these series of events that never stopped,
Yes.
right? So, and it was like a long, slow getting put in a pot of boiling water. When you put a lobster in a pot of cold water, or the frog, I think is what they normally do. The frog doesn't realize the water is getting hot, and then you have a boiled frog. And it was definitely a boiled frog situation.
Yeah.
Um, but it doesn't change the fact that it is so, so hard to just
Yes.
constantly be trudging through your life, and it's no way to live. And it so few people talk about how to get out of it. And I think that's because everyone's path through it is different.
Mm-hmm.
So my goal is always to try to help parents set themselves up to
Mm-hmm.
get the support they need or to be the support they need so that they never have to get to that place. And I do see parents that are getting a diagnosis now for their younger children are better at not going down the path I did, right? And that they don't struggle quite as much, all of them, the way that I did. So I think as the millennials and the younger generations start having kids get diagnosed, that maybe that's going to change a bit for them.
The thing I admire is that eventually, in your process, you chose a pathway of growth and progress rather than the other path, which is to be a martyr and be a victim. Everybody feels sorry for me. And there's when once you're in that mode, it's pretty hard to dig your way out.
Oh, Nancy, I'm updating my website, right? So one of the blogs I moved over today was the one that I call Martyr Mom Mindset or being on Martyr Mom Island. And that's when you feel like you just deserve a trophy for having to parent your kid. And, as a parent, we're all going to have days where they are a total wackadoo and you just don't even want to deal with them. And you're like, where did you come from? Why are you like this?
Yeah,
Uh, and I have zero neurotypical children, so maybe that doesn't happen as often with them. I wouldn't know. Um, but it's people coming from that place, and it's overwhelm that gets you there, right? Because
yeah,
no one ever sits down and says, like, oh, congratulations, you just had a baby. It's autistic. Good luck, right? You just have this baby that you try to do the best you can for, and in a healthy parent-infant relationship, the infant's behavior is going to influence the parent's behavior, and on it goes, and just this cycle round and round and round, so that by the time you realize something's up, they're not talking, they're not meeting their milestones, you are already so adapted to their, we'll say unique
Yeah,
needs
yeah,
that you don't even realize how far from yourself you've gotten.
yeah.
And those kids don't sleep. Like, oh my gosh, the stories I could tell you about my kids not sleeping. Like, I didn't sleep for 8 years.
Uh-huh.
Um, I got 4 hours of sleep last night. And they're 15 and 11 almost. So even when they're older, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get easier. Um, and it's so easy to be overwhelmed. It's so hard to fight back against it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's worth it to not have that martyr mom mindset. And I've seen some dads with it too. It's not exclusive to just moms. I've seen some dads that are real put upon by the fact that their kids are autistic. Spoiler alert, usually they're the ones with the autistic genes that pass them on and don't want to recognize it and
Uh-huh.
are, so it's an adventure.
Well, I think very few of us get through life with life turning out the way we expected it to. We all get cut off at the pass and have
Yeah,
to
yeah,
change direction, and oftentimes the things that in the moment seem like the most tragic,
yeah,
at least in my case, the things that other people would name as tragedies have given me my purpose in life. They've helped me, become a better Nancy. I'm a better Nancy than I was years ago because of all I've had to learn and ways I've needed to grow. I wonder how our viewers can access the help you that offer.
Oh, sure. The best place is my website, which is outofyourordinary.com. And it is in the middle of a refresh, but we should be all live and good to go on April 10th. Fingers crossed. And I have so many resources. We've got the Self-Care Support Squad is my Substack where I offer it's $7 a month, and that gets you an invite to our monthly group coaching call, paperwork party. I write growth notes about how I'm getting through my week, what I learned, how I'm growing. It's a wonderful resource because one other thing is really apparent when you're a caregiver or you're raising neurodivergent kids, finances eventually become an issue. It's expensive to take care of these kids, and right now a lot of the programs we rely on are being cut and transformed, and it's yeah, so I keep it affordable over there, and I'm available for one-to-one coaching, which folks can find out more about on my website.
Okay, repeat the website one more
Sure.
time.
It's outofyourordinary.com.
Great name.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for bringing this message to the public through Authority Magazine, your article, and also with this video. In just a few days, the video will be attached to your article.
Great.
And I'll send you a copy of the video in probably about 30 minutes. So
Awesome. Thank you, Nancy.
thank you very much.
Okay.
Wishing you the very best
Same to you.
and your children.
Thank you.